somewhere in the records of antebellum Louisiana, buried beneath layers of plantation ledgers and auction house receipts, there exists a name that should have been remembered. It lingers like a shadow between ink-stained columns of sugar yields and lists of human property, a name whispered but never properly written, carried in fragments across plantations where no official history dared speak it. They never meant for him to survive memory. They never meant for anyone to know. Yet his story begins not with violence as one might expect, but with a transaction. It was 1847, the tail end of a sweltering season in St. Landry Parish, where fortunes rose and rotted with equal ease in the wet Louisiana heat. The land lay wide and flat, a quilt of humid fields broken only by cypress swamps, so dark they seemed to drink in the daylight. In the parish seat of Opelousas wooden storefronts sagged beneath the weight of the heat, while the courthouse cast a rigid shadow over the slave market that bustled every third Saturday. Into this world stepped Charles Bogard Marching, a third-generation planter whose wealth and reputation rested on a 3,000-acre sugar empire carved from stolen labor and relentless ambition. While other men of his rank collected French wines or bred ras horses, Marchand nursed an obsession of a different breed, one centered on the spectacle of flesh meeting fist. The illegal competitive fighting of enslaved men captivated him, a brutal pastime he defended as physical contests. Though everyone understood the truth behind the word, he wanted a fighter of his own, not just any man, but a spectacle, something he could parade before other wealthy men whose egos demanded an opponent to crush. His opportunity came in September, when a ship from the Carolinas unloaded its cargo onto the docks of New Orleans. Among the chained bodies was a man whose size drew immediate attention. Samuel, they called him. 24 years old, 6'4", 230 pounds of carved muscle, shaped through years of plantation labor. But more alarming to sellers and buyers alike was the note scribbled at the bottom of his bill of sale. Strong-willed, requires firm management. He had been sold 3 times in 4 years, each owner eager to be rid of him despite his physical worth. Marchand paid $800, nearly double the price any rational man would have offered. The other planters laughed at him, called him naive for buying a man known to resist. But Marchand's smile revealed something they did not yet understand. He wasn't buying a laborer, he was buying a weapon. The Marchand plantation sat 7 miles west of Opelousas, reachable by a road that melted into mud whenever rain decided to fall, which was often. The main house looked down upon the flat land with the arrogance of a monarch. Behind it stretched the sugar fields, the watermill, the overseer's lodge, and the rows of crude cabins where men and women slept through haunted nights. Samuel was placed in the stables, a job reserved for enslaved people who were docile, compliant, predictable. 3 qualities Samuel lacked entirely. While others whispered, confused by this assignment, Marchand watched in silence. For 3 weeks he studied Samuel with the patience of a collector examining a prized specimen. He observed the way the man carried weight in his shoulders, the steady discipline in his movements, the relentless quiet in his eyes. There was a calculation behind every gesture, an awareness that did not dim even when he bent to labor. The moment Marchand waited for came one humid October afternoon. Dutch Keller, an overseer, infamous for cruelty and insecurities as large as his fists were small, decided to remind Samuel of his place. He lifted his whip. Samuel caught his wrist. The whip froze in mid-air. The entire plantation seemed to inhale and hold breath. There should have been punishment, pain, a message to all others who might consider defiance. But Marchand stepped into the stables and dismissed Keller with a tone that ended the conversation before it began. When they were alone, he studied Samuel Nat as a master looks at property, but as a chess player examines a piece capable of rewriting the board. "I know what you are," Marchand said. Samuel said nothing. "You won't be broken. I won't try. I'm going to give you an offer instead." The offer was a horror dressed in calm words. Fight for him more, watch the people he'd grown to care for suffer. Marching knew. Samuel had formed bonds despite the instinct to remain alone. A kitchen worker named Dinah, an older man named Silas, a boy named Marcus who followed him like a shadow. Seeking strength in the presence of a man the world insisted was powerless. If Samuel refused, they would be beaten, sold, destroyed. If he fought and, if he won, they would be protected. Samuel accepted, not for himself, but because he understood the currency of survival in a world built on cruelty. The first fight took place on November 14th. 15 planters gathered in a clearing lit by torchfire, each bringing a fighter of his own. Samuel faced a man named Jupiter, a seasoned killer with 3 victories behind him. Their blows cracked through the night like the bones they shattered. Samuel absorbed punishment that should have felled him. Jupiter did not. 4 days later, Jupiter was dead, and Marchin collected $200. "Can you do that again?" he asked Samuel, "as many times as necessary." And so the killing began. Over the next 18 months, Samuel fought 11 more times. 8 died in the ring. Others died days later. Whispers blossomed among enslaved people across the parish. A man who could not be beaten, who returned from fights bruised and bloodied but unbroken. He became myth in real time. Planters traveled from Baton Rouge, Lafayette, New Orleans, desperate to see him. Money poured into Marchin's pockets. Samuel's victories built extensions on the plantation house, bought machinery, purchased land. Each death funded empire, but Samuel watched more closely than anyone realized. The fights gave him access to men who controlled shipping lines, banks, trade routes. They bragged in front of him, treating him as a breathing object rather than a man with a mind, cataloging every word. By the spring of 1849, Samuel had 19 victories and 14 murders forced upon him. The 20th fight was against a man named Cato, a trained fighter with professional technique. For the first time, Samuel teetered on the edge of defeat. A rib cracked. Blood clouded his vision. Planters leaned forward, hungry for the moment Samuel finally fell. He didn't. Something inside him ignited something, not rage, not fear, but certainty. He became unstoppable, almost inhuman in his endurance. When he killed Cato, the crowd recoiled as if witnessing the birth of something they couldn't name. Afterward, Marchin whispered, in the dark of their wagon, "You could have ended it sooner." Samuel replied, "I was teaching him something." "Teaching everyone what?" A pause. "That I can't be beaten." The story grew like wildfire, crossing parishes faster than overseers could stamp it out. And with each retelling came new meaning. To the enslaved, Samuel became proof that the system was not absolute. To the planters, he became a threat wearing the shape of an obedient monster. The fights escalated. 32, 33, 34, 30-5, each more violent, each more watched, each more dangerous for Marchin, who, in his journal, confessed fear of what he'd created. Then came the 36th fight, and the incident with the young overseer who struck Samuel, unaware of the storm he was provoking. Marchin fired the overseer on the spot. That night, he wrote only one sentence in his ledger: Gaines was right. Still, he did not stop. The 37th fight was arranged secretly, in the swamp where no law would listen and no tree would speak. Ajax was Broughton imported giant with 9 kills behind him. But outside the ring, darker machinations moved. Several planters who'd lost money schemed to kill Samuel regardless of the outcome. Rifles were hidden, orders given. This would be the end of the Bayou Giant. But enslaved people overheard. Messages traveled through hands and whispers until Dinah pressed a folded scrap into Marchin's palm. They planned to kill him no matter what. Marchin had a choice: warn Samuel or let the killing happen. For the first time in years, he chose the man over the system. He told Samuel everything. Samuel merely nodded. I need one more fight. Why? Because that's how many it takes. What it took, Marching would only understand later. Samuel and Ajax fought like two storms colliding. 33 minutes of blood, mud, broken ribs, and refusal to yield. When Samuel killed Ajax, the rifles were raised ready to erase him. But then something unprecedented happened. More than 40 enslaved people stepped forward, forming a silent wall between Samuel and the gun barrels. They risked everything without speaking a word. Shooting Samuel meant shooting them. Shooting them meant breaking rules. Even planters feared. The conspiracy collapsed in the swamp. Within an hour, the place emptied, leaving only Samuel swaying in the center of the ring. Still alive, still undefeated. As they left, he told Marching, 37 men died because you decided we were property. I hope your money was worth it. Marching changed after that. He freed Dinah, Silas, and Marcus. He tried to free Samuel too, but Samuel refused. I'm not free until we all are. And there's work to be done from inside this system, quiet work, patient work, the kind that matters. For years, enslaved people on Marching's plantation vanished into freedom through channels no one could trace. A network grew. Stories spread. Samuel walked the plantation like a man between worlds, untouchable, dangerous, impossible to understand. In 1854, he disappeared from the record entirely. Some said he escaped north. Some said he died in the swamps. Some said he became a ghost of the Underground Railroad. None could say for certain, but the legend lived, carried through generations, until it stood taller than the man himself. And maybe that is what he intended,